All right, we're back at the Comics Lounge for another Beyond the Panel. Tonight we have Jane American. We're also talking about Get Nerdy and Symbiotic. So, Jason Douglas is the author of Jane American. I am the author of Get Nerdy, and then Mike Birch will be joining us very soon, hopefully. He is the author of Symbiotic, and you've got your second book of Jane American coming out. How crazy was that to kind of take that and turn it into book number two?
It's funny, actually. That was the plan was. It's not even really book two. It's not like an issue two.
Okay.
This is a 132 page graphic novel. This is the entire story. And what's kind of interesting was because I am still relatively new at this. I've been a reader and a collector exponentially longer than I've been a creator. And this was like a dream come true a few years ago. And my very first book got published and picked up by SourcePoint Press, and it sold out and got me 2 Ringo nominations, Best Writer and Best English Short Story. And that whole weird, atypical way comics got made. And then when it was time for me to put out Jane, smarter people than me, people with more experience than me, were like, oh, no. No matter what kind of good faith you've accrued, no matter what kind of reputation you've gotten with the awards and with the sellout and blah, 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 you cannot jump onto Kickstarter, which is the way that, comics are made in the 21st century with a 130 some page graphic novel. That's going to be a $20,000 to $25,000 project. And it doesn't matter the little foothold that you've made. It's not going to happen. Yep. And smarter people were like, you need to do a one shot first. So actually, I had the story beats completely written for the entire graphic novel, like all 4 parts. Like it was, I had bits of it written. I had all the story beats throughout. I knew exactly where it was going, what I needed to hit. And then we kind of put the brakes on that and said, no, let's do this thing first. We took certain elements from the beginning of the story, fleshed them out, changed things around, changed the order, and did the one shot last year. And then, it serves as a 0 issue.
Okay.
It serves as a first issue. It serves as the movie you saw as a kid, and then when you see it as an adult, means something different to you, because most of those story beats are still in the graphic novel. They're just in a different order. They're redrawn by my artist because she's grown so much over the last year, and they read very differently because the context is now different. But what I did was, the real wild thing, the plan from the beginning, once it was set that we were going to do the one shot last year, which some of the people in chat were talking about, is it was a pretty successful campaign, especially for my first one. And what I did was, because I knew that the graphic novel was coming and the price point doesn't change, it's still going to be this massive $23,000 production. Yep. I took every single penny that the one shot made and didn't pay myself, and put all of that to defray the cost of this. So that's why, our goal for this one is basically 4 times less than your standard graphic novel Kickstarter, because, hey, I've been a public teacher for the last 25 years. I make 12 cents a year. I'm going to be fine. So I took all that, what would have been profit, right?
Yeah.
Yes, guys, what's up?
Hey,
how you doing?
Good.
What's up, Jason?
And I just put it right in there to make sure that this thing was affordable for everybody.
Okay.
So it's been a wild adventure, because it's one of those things. It's one of those things where, you're more experienced the second time you do anything, right?
That's true.
But you're also very much know what's hard about it and what's risky about it. And so it's scary in a different respect. And that's why, this is so important to me to get out in the world. And it's been a wild ride. And we're I don't know, we're less than 100 hours in, but things are going pretty well.
I want to show something special real quick, guys. I just want to let you know, Jason.
Hey, I know that book.
You did right. You did. So I wanted you to see it.
I got one of those right here, but yours is signed by the author or something. Mine isn't. That's wild.
Yep, mine is signed by the author, baby. And so far, I love it. I just haven't finished it yet because we're all creatives, as you know.
Well, I tell you what, I got a promise for you, Mike. I got a promise for you. You get to the end of that book. Jason. It's going to compel you to go back to the beginning, and it reads completely different the second time through.
The first time I read Jane American, same thing. When I was rereading Jane American, there were things that I picked up on in it that they hit different.
So
it was so interesting the way
it's
that the
funny that you
story is
say that.
told, and I can't like that's why I can't wait to read this next
Well,
iteration, like the full story, because I'm like, if this is just the one shot, like this is the
Yeah.
tiny piece, what is this whole thing gonna read like?
there's a lot. It gets darker. That's
Okay.
for sure. A lot of those themes, I mean, you're really just introducing a lot of those themes about
Yeah.
identity, about self-worth, about self-fulfillment, about being you in a world that might tell you something different. Like those are all hinted at. Like you get those feelings from that one shot. That's all sitting there. But it all plays out. Like, I mean,
Okay.
she is thrust into this adult world that does not want her in that spot because of age, because of gender, because of what she can do and how she's got to keep that secret. Like all that stuff plays out. And it's like, it's so important to me because those themes are universal for everybody, no matter how old you
Hell
are.
yeah.
And it's still going on for young people and old people in the 21st century. And we're talking about the 1940s. I got something I got to tell you though, because you're talking about like noticing the little details. So we just hit our second stretch goal today. And I made
Nice.
the stretch goals really, really small because I want everybody to have it. And the second stretch goal was,
Nice.
we call it the back matter bonanza. And I knew we were going to get there. I was super excited that I'm hoping we were going to get there. So I've already written a lot of it. And what I started with was end notes. And it's all those little kind of Easter egg details about the historical little bits and pieces and the little pop culture references that maybe you missed the first time around. But so it'll be
Okay.
at the back where it's like, hey, in chapter 1 on page 17, that little thing that you
Yeah.
noticed in the corner, here's what that means. Here's a link to learn more about it, that kind of
Oh,
thing.
cool.
It was like really, really fun to write.
That sounds
And
dope.
Mike, you kind of have a little bit of an experience with that because you took basically your 40, 50 page monster and condensed it down and put all that information into a trading card.
Yeah. So okay, so here's what happened, everyone. It's funny that you say that, Chris, because that's exactly what happened. Like I absolutely wrote too much, which is not a bad thing. But I realized when I wrote it. Okay, so when I wrote second book, I was trying to be as descriptive as I can be, but at the same time, I was just flowing, so I wasn't keeping track of the page numbers or anything I was doing. So as my flow was continuing, and I started getting to page 30, so I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I'm on page 38 now. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? I'm on page 44. I'm like, oh wait, I gotta slow down. But then I started to come up with something because I have a friend. His name is Patrick Hickey. He owns a comic book company called Legacy Comics. Shout out to him. So he makes trading cards and he does like comics on cards. So I was like, well, I don't want to do a comic on a card, but I decided, okay, let me take out the first 6 pages because the first 6 pages were pretty much. This is book 2, everybody. So this is what we're talking about right now. This is book 2, and that is the card False Origins. So you scanned that already, Chris, so you see what happens when you scan it, right? So these cards I'm selling for like $3. And what it is I took 6 pages out of this book and I put that art back into that card. And the reason why I did that is because when you read the story, you'll see that I kind of recap his origins anyway. So I was like, well, you know what? Then I can take out his origins and just put that as a separate piece of art and a trading card. What a great idea. And like I said, I was inspired to do this, and it was just something. And I throw this out to you, Jason, in case you ever have an idea like this. Like maybe you have too many pages where you want to tell a little side story, but you don't want to go into a whole comic. I mean, like these things, when you scan them, I was able to take 6 pages in a PDF form, and you can scan them and you can download them. When you scan it, it downloads it to an instant PDF. The Einstein one came out better. The Faust one, you have to just stretch the screen out to fit the screen, but the Einstein one fits to scan because
that's cool.
I was trying to figure out how to do it.
It feels old school, but you're doing it in a new way. I mean, you saw if you flip to the back of this, it's got that 8-page like exclusive story that dives back between the panels right here. But that's that standard way you do that. That's in the back of the special edition. That's a really cool and interesting way to do it. It feels very like old school where you photocopy something and staple it together and put it on the comic shop, thing and like sell it for $1. It feels old school, and yet because it's the QR code and because it's cramming together PDF style, it's very 21st century. That's really cool.
Plus, you get the benefits of having a trading card, and
Right.
these things are mint. I mean, and so
Yeah.
it's like I said, look, it's designed on both sides. So everybody, look, check it out. But this code don't work, so you can't scan this one. This one came back bad. I'm gonna be giving away some of the older ones. These are the ones that don't work. But anyway, yeah. So you got a trading card and a mini 6-page comic on each card. I made
like
2
that.
already. I'm working on a third one now. But I was also listening as we were loading up about what you learned about from making book 1 versus book 2, because I am exactly on that same rhythm with you. Hey, what's up, brother? So yeah, what you were saying is true. I concur with you, Jason. Like, you learn from, the first time you do it versus the second time. Because Chris, I don't know if you had a chance to open up the comic, but what do you think about the paneling and how I did it compared to book 1?
It's still sitting in a box right here. In all honesty, it's been absolutely insane.
It's
I've
funny.
been trying to make my way down here to open it.
There's something about.
It's all good. Don't worry about it.
There's something about your first time out where you've got like this irrational confidence and blissful ignorance. There are so many things you don't know.
Yeah.
So there are all these things you can't be afraid of. Right. And like, even though the further along you are, the more experience you have, you also know what's really hard, what's really scary, what's going to take the blood, sweat, and tears and time. And so like, it's almost like, I know like in music, they call it like the sophomore slump or whatever. And I don't exactly equate that to writing or even the production of it, but it's a different animal. For every advantage that you get that you're no longer a rookie, you've got handicaps because you're no longer a rookie.
Exactly. Yep. And also, there is an expectation for you to do better. Even if people, like, look, I gave myself harsh criticism on the first comic. And I'll be totally honest with everyone here right now. I had zero idea what I was doing. But I feel like in this way, at least for me, I like to work and be hands-on in things. And this is how I learn and teach myself. So I didn't have a problem doing that. I had the conceptual idea how to do it. And I'm not going to lie. The first book, I think it came out pretty good. But I just knew, like, in the back of my mind, there's something I'm missing. How can I take this and improve it in book 2? And that's what I did in book 2. Because the way that I'll show you guys a couple of things. So I don't want to give away the whole book. But it's just the way that I paneled it versus the first one. In other words, I took pieces of the original art and I made it background paneling. So just to give you an example, that's what I'm talking about. So that background that you see up there, all that ooze and stuff, that's actual art that I actually put in, and I started editing and making that into original pieces that when you start looking at the book in certain pages, it actually collages up in some cases, and it actually looks pretty cool. So this is something that I came up with, and I'm very happy with how I did this. It was more like I wanted to do more with the comic and more with the background, and I feel like this is a style that I started and I'm really happy with, and it gives my comic something that, because I didn't want to just make a comic, I wanted to make something that no one ever made. So when I explain to people what a manga comic is, this is what it means. It means that in the stylings of a manga, you open it like a manga comic from left to right. But now when you're reading it, it doesn't read like a manga. You read it like a standard comic from left to right. And I've looked this up. I've seen people do a manga, but I've never seen nobody do the manga comic. That's why I said I'm the first one to do that. And in the future, if people want to do it, cool, no problem. I'll be flattered. But this is like something that I always wanted to do. And I'd be honest, like, so from the second book, doing from the first book to the second, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about better editing and paneling. I mean, I could hire people to do this, but I just feel like this part is something that, because I did come up with this art is my art. So, these are all my original art. I'm more like a digital creator. So I created these characters and then I just started writing stories around them. And I knew, you know what? I have a bunch of artist friends. I'm like, maybe I could see as someone, because I knew Waylon could do my style. Like Waylon is like, Waylon was the artist that did this, by the way, everybody. So, and this is book 1. So this is what we're talking about. So Waylon Weathers, I knew looking at his art style that I think he was able to do what I wanted to do, or he did it perfectly. And that's good when you get an artist that can flow with you. But go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. No, you're good. So Jason, after doing, because you've done Parallel, you've done Jane American One Shot, there's been a couple others, right? or is that just the two?
So I mean, those are the two big stories.
Okay.
But like, so when Parallel sold out, we did the special edition. So that's like a
Okay.
whole different kind of thing, and the award show and stuff was in between that, and then the one shot. And now the graphic novel is what's on Kickstarter right now. So like, if you search up, Jane American or me or Jane American the graphic novel, like the Kickstarter's running right now, and it's 132-page hardcover and 132-page soft cover. We got cool enamel pins.
Nice.
So after doing two really successful comics,
Yeah.
what were the things that you learned from those? Even though they were successful, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's like different things, because there's the takeaways that we kind of talked about how to build a campaign, I guess, like how to market it, like how to structure things. And then you change as a writer over time too. I mean, like I came into comic writing when I wrote the first half of Parallel as somebody who had written and even published a bunch of like one-act plays, because that's like what I was doing. My day job as a teacher, I was like running a drama club, but it's like a different animal. And then like you learn stuff as a writer every single time along the line. I think get better and better and better. Like I was way too verbose, right? Like early on, like way like EC Comics level of caption and image and the dialogue all doing the same thing. I mean, not quite that, extreme. That's a little bit hyperbolic, but like just overwritten a lot of stuff, and learning how to let things breathe a little bit more, learning how to pace things a little bit better, is just something you pick up along the way. Like I think I knew how to tell a story going in, but telling a story in comics format it's a different beast, right? I truly believe that you are balancing when you put something in the comic format, which is, I think, the most malleable way to tell a story. It does all the stuff that prose
100%.
does, and a bunch of stuff that prose doesn't. Does all a bunch of stuff that film does, but a bunch of stuff that film can't. You can tell any story, and yet when you're building it, when you're writing a script, you have to balance so many more things in your brain than any other type of writing. Okay.
Yeah.
Just the idea that you've got to keep dialogue, narration, sound effects, the storyline, panel layout, panel pacing, whether you're going to reveal something on the turn, whether you're going to reveal something on the facing page, that you got to keep themes and all of that stuff at once it's just more balls in the air than almost any other type of writing, in my opinion.
I completely agree.
I definitely concur with that. I mean, like, I could give you some examples, like what you was just saying, because, like, all right, when I write, I mean, I don't know how you write, Jason, so you probably write like I do. For my story, for my symbiotic story, I already have, like, pretty much the concept worked out in my mind, like, exactly how it's going down. But I don't really, like, I do two things. I dictate to just have my stuff notated, and I do write by hand. I mean, I don't have to, but I don't know. I just find something about writing by hand to be more, for me, in touch with my writing. I don't know. It's just, and I write sloppy, so it's all good. But I don't care. I just like to write.
If I was 10 years older, they never would have hired me as a teacher when they saw my handwriting, my spelling. I would.
Believe me, penmanship was the one class I always failed. I was an A- student, and that was the only reason why I had a minus, was because my penmanship was horrific. But I digress on that. What I like about what you would say was that I have a process where I do write some stuff down, but sometimes if I'm not stuck, but more like trying to figure out how to continue my story without, this is, I think, the most important thing that all writers need to know. When you're writing any kind of story, make sure you put in your mind consciously, constantly, all the time, do not write yourself into a corner. That's the most important thing, I feel. And this is how stories can get really screwed up. So that's the one thing I'm always thinking, never write myself into a corner. And then I elaborate on the story, and then I'll say, okay, well, you know what? And sometimes I wait, and then a new idea I can fit right into the story. Like, I created a computer for Einstein, and I'm calling it Albert. And I gave it this whole acronym. This is me thinking about how I could, this was me writing book 3. So, and I gave what Albert stands for. It stands for artificial, logistics, binary, electron, I forget, but it all fits
Yeah.
the acronym. Electron terminal. So Albert, yeah, it all fits the acronym. But I made it to where, because the character has like a special ability, he's an electron, meaning that his mind processes thoughts 1,000 times quicker than a human. And when he comes out of atomizer, now he has even more potential unlocked. So he's able to use this computer that he invents, and he calls it Albert. It's pretty much in this world's first AI computer that really works on a level that no human can touch it. Only he can operate it. If you try to touch it, it will literally kill you. Because you have to feed it power in order to make this thing process. So, I'm just giving you a little background story, but that example I'm giving is because I just feel like sometimes I'm not in a rush to write everything down. I keep the ideas rolling, and I keep the concept and what I'm doing from beginning, middle to end constant, but always leaving it open for adding things in there that maybe I didn't get inspired to do, but months later something happens and I'm like, this makes sense. If that makes sense to you, Jason. I don't know if that's
absolutely.
your process of writing or not, but I used to be like this guy that would sit there or like write all day. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna let my thoughts flow and let it come to me naturally. And I feel like imagination for this point is the most important, because what you said, Jason, was totally on point, and I never even thought about it like that. Yeah, you got to think about the music. You got to think about the explosions. You got to think about how everything's going to choreograph. You have to imagine this, and I am imagining it. Like, especially when I wrote the first book and they had their battle, I had to imagine that whole battle scene, the explosion. How was I going to continue from that point on? Things like that. Yeah, I get that.
And that's the biggest thing. Is like, when can you?
A big thought.
When can you include a giant splash page? And one of the things that I've noticed over the years of reading comic books that aren't missing from like smaller publishing comic books, but I feel like is a fine line that has to be kind of tread, is when you don't have ads in your comic book because you're a small creator, you're not promoting 5 other books that are being pumped out by the same publisher at the same exact time. You don't have the leeway of putting a pause on the story to put like a full page ad or a 2-page ad. You have to kind of work with what you've got. And the thing that I've noticed a lot with comic books is they make use of ads in order to split up the story and hide stuff from the reader. Like, this is where this is left off. Here's a little cliffhanger. Here's what's coming out in the next month. Here's what's coming out 2 months from now. Boom. There's the cliffhanger that we just kind of left you on.
That right there, guys, is my first ad. I did this for my buddy, the guy for Legacy Comics, so I do have one ad. But you're right, because I was trying to get the ad.
You got to figure out where you got to put it.
It is on that side, on the other comic, and it hides. Yeah. But
so
like what we were talking about, like there was a scenario I was writing in Symbiotic Book 1, and that was the thing I was trying to figure out. They were having a fight scene. How was I going to do this fight scene? And then I came up with like they're arguing on one page, and then that's where the battle's taking place. And then you know what happens after that. But I thought that was great because on the page before, it just pretty much has them literally going at it, and I put my own little symbiotic thing there as an ad, like you say. I actually did the way you said it, because look, that would be the next page, and then you flip over, and then all of a sudden you got them attacking each other. And then in the end, you got this crazy ass explosion. So,
Jason, what have you found?
I didn't even think about it, but you're right. Wow, that's a lot of process.
What have you found with Jane American? Because I don't think you have ads in yours.
No, it does. In one way, it's very freeing because you don't have to actually think about that.
Yeah.
But in the other way, it does add one more thing that you're juggling, because you're then the pacing that you create through panel size, layout, and what you want told where becomes actually more important, because you don't get the artificial crutch of the Skittles ad.
Yeah.
The what was the chewy candy, the bonkers from like the 90s. You don't get to you don't get do you remember the Marvel had them all the time, DC too. Do you remember like was it like the Hostess baked goods would actually have the 1-page ad, and it was a comic in and of itself, the Flash.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Everybody has Twinkies at the end. And like you don't have that to allow yourself to take that break. So you then deciding that you need to slow this down by making the panels increase in size, maybe subtly over a couple of pages, or throw that half-page splash in there, or tighten things up with more panels on a page. Like, you have to decide your own, and that's just something else that you've got to reckon with as you're building it.
So
yeah, I mean, like everything you
and
just
you've
said
got a
is
team,
100%
Jason.
correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's you, and you've got your artist.
Mhm.
Who else is on your team?
Dave Lentz is my letterer and art director. That dude is
Okay.
wicked talented. And then I've got two fantastic editors, Dr. Christy Blanche, who is a writer in her own right, a shop owner, and probably one of the top 5 most in-demand moderators for panels at Comic-Cons across the country.
Okay.
And we just actually wrote something new together this summer that'll probably be out next year. But she's one of my editors. And then Randy Pink is my other editor, who is a New York Times bestselling young adult novelist.
Oh, wow.
And is a friend of mine, and she did an edit on the book. But like, yeah, so but I'm also the boss. So like, I have to, like, I have to pay everybody, and so it's another. This is different than Parallel 2, because for that, I mean, it was still my book, but like SourcePoint really held my hand on it.
Okay.
And I think, Travis, who was like editor in chief at the time, could probably just sense from being a much more experienced comic guy than me that like I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, we're going to let you write this. And we will get you an artist. We will get you an editor. We will take care of this. You're going to sign a terrible contract, but we're going to take care of you and get you in the door in a way that comics are not made in the 21st century. Like, this is your walking out here.
Did you do a Kickstarter for Parallel?
No, that was just SourcePoint bought it and like put it out in the world. And
nice.
It did what it did. It like, I don't know if you know this part of the story, but it dropped right into lockdown and flopped hard. And that blissful ignorance, irrational confidence kicked in because I didn't know. Nobody told me that what you're supposed to do at that point is, if you're just like fulfilling a lifelong childhood dream and you get this far, which most people don't, you just wash your hands and go, well, there it is. Or if you're a professional and this is what you do, you go, well, this one didn't work. I'm working on the next one. Nobody told me that that's the way it was supposed to go. So what I did is for the next 18 months, I did 75 interviews.
Okay.
And word of mouth started to spread. And the book, like the however many thousand print run that first run was, like completely sold out. SourcePoint, I found out at Baltimore Comic-Con when I was doing a panel, I found out that SourcePoint went to all the shops that like automatically buy like 10 copies of whatever book they put out, had to buy back tons of books to meet the online demand from all those things. Wow. And then Ringo nominations come up. So like, it was in the back of the special edition I write the afterwards, it is the most atypical way to like break into the industry in the 21st century. In fact, like when I pitched the book to Travis at Motor City Comic-Con, again, not how you do it, right?
Yeah.
There's no submission. This was not me doing my own. I literally, like it was 1971, took him a script in it with freaking colored paper clips from my school desk and said, here. And he was like, he literally said, it's like you're trying to pitch me a comic from decades ago. Like, what is going on with you, man? But I like this. He read it and they bought it. And then it taught me enough and got me where I had enough confidence and enough of a following or whatever to be able to do it this way. Now, when this Kickstarter is done and this book is out in the world, like the next plan is, which is kind of how you do this now, is you take that to the larger publishers. Like, I want to take it to Scholastic. I want to take it to Houghton Mifflin. I want it in libraries. I want it in schools.
Yep.
Like, I need to prove to them that it can exist on its own. And that's what this Kickstarter is about.
Because your first one, Jane American, the one shot, made 214% of its goal.
Right. And that's and you're like, oh, if you're somebody who's doing this as your full-time job for your living, like that, you're like, that is fantastic. You've now got a little bit of money to like live on for a while. And instead, what I did is I just, like I told you earlier, I took every single penny of it and just poured it into this. So that I didn't have to run a $20,000 campaign. I could run a $5,000 campaign. Yep. And then I did the same thing with the books. And this is a much more recent development. So the plan was to defray the cost of the big project from day one. But the other thing that kind of bothered me about the Kickstarter experience last year, and half of me agreed with it and half of me, because I'm split down the middle. I am a half reader and a half collector when it comes to my comics, right?
Okay.
Chasing my fancy covers. I'm chasing my keys. I'm chasing my runs over here. Yep. And over here, I just want to read a good story. I want bang for your buck. I want rereadability. I want those things that like you like when you like to read comics.
Yeah.
And so like I had all these fancy covers. I had my chromium last year. I had my soft touch laminate that looked old and felt old. It was
And I
wild.
was like, give it to me.
Right. And I loved them. Well, I mean, you know what those Kickstarters look like. Like that's like it's a floppy that's like a $50 book because there's only a few of them and blah, 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 blah. And I get it. But also there's a version that eventually gets on a shelf that's $4.99 or $6.99.
Yeah.
And so when you look at, like, if you go to the Kickstarter right now and you look at the wraparound hardcover that Cena Grace, like New York Times bestselling author of Superman books now, that he did on any other Kickstarter, that's $100 hardcover.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at
100%.
the softcover wraparound on any other Kickstarter, that's a $50 wraparound softcover. I priced them exactly what they will be on the shelves. It's $20 and $40.
Yep.
Again, not because this is the spot to make money for me. This is the spot where I want this in people's hands. Now, if there's a step beyond that, fantastic. But this story is so important to me that it gets out in the world and people get a chance to read it, that I am willing to make those financial sacrifices because for me, I make this joke. And sometimes it hurts me to make this joke because it's way too close to true. Like, I'm a public school teacher. I make 12 cents a year. I'll be fine.
Yep.
I don't need the tiny margins of, whatever. But I just want people to read this. I mean, I don't even know if people know what this is about. So like Jane American it's this World War II coming of age story.
Yep.
Okay. Takes place in a small town, Plymouth, Michigan, which is where I grew up. My grandparents grew up. And like during the war years, Jane is going through a life of family stability and hope until she's not.
Yep.
Until war brings tragedy to her front doorstep and everything changes, and she's changed in unbelievable ways that are better left hidden. Okay. But the economic hardships at the end of the war, dad's not coming home. Mom can no longer, through societal norms, be a Rosie the Riveter. So Jane is left with this choice. She can stay safe, she can stay hidden, or she can embrace who she really is and what she can now truly do for the sake of everybody that she loves. Now, this book, in the same way that Parallel was chock full of those real, relatable ideas about existential dread, time-passing dreams deferred, and yet was wrapped in that sci-fi genre wrapping paper that all of us comic nerds love, Jane American is all about, at its core, those universal, relatable themes about identity, about self-worth, about self-realization, about being you in a world that maybe tells you that's not okay. But it's also this deeply, deeply personal story to me because it is named after and inspired by my late grandmother who went through all that stuff 80 years ago. It is dedicated to every kid who's gone through my classroom the last 25 years who still struggles with identity today, even though that's ridiculous in the 21st century. And then the part that kind of breaks my heart, but it also makes my heart swell, is it's very much now dedicated to my late grandfather, who just last year at the age of 99, when he realized he wasn't going to make it to 100, made me promise that the book that contains the name and likeness of his high school sweetheart would see print. So this is me fulfilling that promise to him.
It's amazing.
I want people to read it.
Nice.
And having that price point that pushes it maybe to a more financially successful level on a Kickstarter is less important than more people at an affordable level being able to get it in their hands and read the story.
See, and that's the thing. Like when I was planning out my Kickstarter, I'm trying to think through, okay, like if I'm printing a book for $12, I'm going to be selling it for $20 to $25 because you have to make something, and then you're trying to think through, okay, what is the shipping going to be on this, and this, when that's not even in your hands yet. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that a lot of Kickstarters, the stuff's not even in your hands.
Can we be honest? I will say this: it's maybe the most frustrating thing about launching. You have to hit the launch button.
Yep.
And it's an all or nothing gig, right?
Yeah.
You either make your goal, you either get what you get, or you get nothing, and you have to make a dozen price calculations before you actually know anything. And it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I am with you. I know exactly. It was one of, oh my God, I know. Yes. It's crazy. Yeah.
And I'm like talking to the publisher that I'm going through. I'm like, okay, what am I looking at for a paperback book that's about 150 pages long, like 6x9 maybe? And they're like, oh, well, that could run you anywhere from this to this. And I'm like, could you give me a little bit more of like a this?
I could give you an answer on this, Chris, because this helped me for years. This is before I became a comic publisher. I used to sell books on Amazon a lot. I mean, like I was getting people's old school books and selling them used for like I don't know, 40, 50, $100, whatever, right? I learned from my postal man. He told me when I was bringing the books, he was like, "These are all books, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, anytime you sell a book that doesn't have any kind of ads, you're allowed to ship it under what's called media mail."
Yeah.
So long as your books don't have like any kind of paid media in it, you're allowed to ship it via media mail. Now, what's good about media mail is that even for a book that size, it'll still calculate media no matter what size the packaging you use. The only thing about media is that it may be a little slower, but I find that I've done it first class and I've done it media, and it all comes the same speed. It all comes the same speed. I know, because I've done this for many years. So my advice to you about with the shipping costs, at least on my end, it's always about $5 to ship. And like if I'm gonna mail you guys like a comic or two, I combine it. I'm not gonna charge because it's not gonna make it any different. It goes by mostly the volume and a weight of a comic. On average, if you're lucky, is like about 9 ounces. So it's not gonna add any significance on it. It's pennies on the dollar. So that's how I've always shipped. It's been very reliable. You could actually set it up to where if you want people to come pick up your stuff, or if you're doing it from the warehouse, I don't know how you're doing it, if you're getting the book shipped to you or not. I mean, I didn't really do a Kickstarter. It's not because I didn't want to. It was just because I was in the financial point of just doing it. Like I was just like, okay, I do have the finances to do it, so let me just try it. And I just went for it, and it's out in the world. And I'll be honest, I mean, like, I wanted to do better. It has done good for the fact that not only that I have zero idea how to write a comic, put a comic together, produce it, whatever. I don't have any idea how to market this or anything. I'm using social media, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I just had a show last week, my first I would call it a con. It was like it was more like a LARPing kind of event, but still, I was like the only comic guy there. And I'll be honest, I mean, like, I'm not shitting on anyone who was there, but I think my booth did the best. We did some business there, and I was very happy. And I was like, this is a non-Comic-Con event, and I did well, so I can't wait. I have a show coming up in September. We're going to be doing a St. Anne's Comic-Con out in Staten Island. That's going to be like my really first true con, and this is a really big one out here. So I went to it last year. I didn't get into it because I didn't find out about it. So like this one thing, I didn't even find out that I was having all these local cons until the book was done, and I'm like, oh Jesus! Like I suck at managing this entire the management part. I suck at. I mean, I'm learning, but I think in time I'm going to have to hire some managers, and I'm going to need a little help because I know there's certain people that do marketing and they know how to target the audience better than I do. It's one thing that I could talk to you all day about this, but there's just certain ways that people who communicate like this know how to target their specific groups. And I'm just doing so much right now. It's crazy.
You could ship from the warehouse. You could ship it all to your house. There's so many different ways, and all of those have different costs. So going back to like what Jason said is you don't know what is going to go into each thing. So like the other thing is I can ship 1 book or 2 books media mail, no problem. Like that's perfectly fine. I could ship that book media mail and it would all be good. But pretty much every single one of my the rewards has like a bracelet in it, has a t-shirt in it, has a hoodie in it, and as soon as you add something that's not media, you can't do media mail.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, you know what, I'm going to do a flat rate of $20. That's a medium-sized box that will fit a book or 2. That will definitely fit a t-shirt. I can wrap the t-shirt around the book. Like, there's plenty of ways that I could figure it out where I can just get a bunch of these mailers and ship them straight out to people. But again, on top of that, all of those shipping fees, Kickstarter takes a little percentage of that. Kickstarter takes a percentage of everything. So if you're talking about doing this, this, and this, you have to then factor in as well. Like, okay, like if I'm making 10 grand, I'm really only going to be making like 9,700.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be looking at maybe making after taxes like $9,000.
Right.
So you got to like
You've
there's
got
so much
they've
stuff.
got their double fee structure.
Yep.
It's a lot to figure out.
Yeah.
And I remember that first one, like I was trying to find creative ways to like make, like you were thinking through like the shipping.
Yep.
I found a printer that was like down the street. And
Yeah.
so I saved blah, blah, blah dollars on going to pick up my books instead of having them shipped to me.
Yep.
I shipped every one of those Jane American one-shots in Mylar. And you're like, oh my God, what a luxury. I worked at my buddy's comic shop several weekends in a row and he gave me like all his spare Mylar. You know, like it was like things like that. Like when you're, God, you know, indie comics from the beginning have been this smaller, wonderful, creative outlet for people that pour in maybe per capita more blood, sweat, and tears than any other level of the industry. But like now in the 21st century, you have this whole new set of things that you've got to figure out that go with that independent production as well, which just certainly doesn't make the job any easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had people coming to me, they're like, really? You're asking for that much to do a book? I was like, yeah, because we're not like a lot of people I know are into comic books. So they see like $7,500 Kickstarter. They're like, that's a lot for a comic book. I was like, yeah, but it's not for a comic book. Like you have to realize that people got to get paid.
So like, if like you scroll down my page, and I don't even remember where I got this idea. It was probably doing the research of like, you know, like looking at couple dozen campaigns and going, okay, what did they do? What do I like? Yeah. And I just saw the transparency section at the bottom. And it's a pie chart. It's the pie chart breakdown. And that's what I use every time to show you exactly where each dollar goes to in the cost. And I just happen to have the 2 pie charts this time because it shows what this campaign costs, and that's the $23,000 price tag. And here's where my $5,500 comes from because all that other stuff got taken care of by the last Kickstarter because everybody was so great. But like I like that idea of breaking down because you're right. Because somebody looks at it and goes, yeah, but this is a $10 comic or a $5 comic or whatever it is. How can it cost that much money? You're like, well, let me show you.
Yep.
Right. And that's paying artists, that's paying editors, that's paying shipping, that's paying the Kickstarter fees. I love to make sure that a slice of that pie shows that Kickstarter is taking as much, right?
Yep.
And if it's just, I mean, I call it the transparency section because I just want people to know.
Yeah.
Right. Understand that, yeah, I want to get you this product, but you've got to understand this is why it costs what it costs.
And not to mention, you have to, at the end of the day, you have to be able to pay yourself. So the marketing that you're doing to put this book out there, whether it be through Comic-Cons, through Kickstarter, through emails, through whatever, you have to factor that in. If I'm putting forth 40 hours over the course of this 30 to 60 day Kickstarter, I'm going to be sitting here saying, that's also getting factored into my marketing fees. Those are things that I have to look at personally because at the end of the day, I'm asking for $7,500. That's to then go to a publisher with $5,000 and say, hey, this is the package that I want, and hope that I can do a couple add-ons if we go over that $7,500. Like, perfect world, I'm making $15,000 and I'm taking all 15 and giving it straight to the publisher and saying, hey, this is what, like, I want every single package you can give me. I want the marketing. I want the magazine ads. I want the editing. I want a ghostwriter to come in here and just check everything over. Like, I want everything that you can offer me, and we'll make a nice little package. And I've got this much to spend. Like, that's my end game. That's what I'm going to do with every single dollar that I make is go to my self-publishing company. Because even when you do self-publish, you still have to go through a company, which a lot of people don't realize. It's not just, hey, I'm going to go and print this book on my computer and say, here's the book. Like, you got to go to your local printer. You got to go to a self-publisher, and then the marketing comes into play. Like you were saying, how you had to do 75 different interviews.
Yeah.
Like it's daunting, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, if you're not getting invited to cons as a guest because of whatever reputation you've got to pay for artist alley tables.
Yep.
Right. And your travel isn't included. And oh yeah, like there is, there's a very different mindset that I make. Like, I've got, and it's so funny how weird that world works, because it's kind of like sometimes it's a who kind of thing, or sometimes it's a bit of luck.
It's a carnival who exactly.
Well,
right
I mean,
about
like
that.
I am going to be in November. I'm going to be like a special guest of the second biggest con in Michigan, and yet next month I'm doing Artist Alley at something 1/4 the size. Because it's the connections that you make on the one and then the other, and it's kind of funny. Like, you would think that con that's 1/4 as big as this giant con that I'm a guest at would be like, would you like to be a guest at our con? They're like, no, we want you to pay for a table. I'm like, they're like paying for, they're giving me a hotel at this other thing that it blows yours out of water, and you're like, well, it's just what it is, and you got to figure all that stuff in, and it's just look.
I mean, I'm trying to get into Comic-Con. I'm sorry, go ahead. My bad.
But for people who, if you ever want a non-story pitch bit of reasoning for somebody to back you, to buy your product, to support you, it's like you're going to get something from me that is truly, truly full of passion and something that's important to me. Because no sane person would ever do all the stuff that we have just talked about tonight. Ever, unless it was something that meant to them more than all the trouble that it is.
Yeah.
And yes, we made a foil cover as well. I had to. Yeah. I had to make this.
The chromium covers, the foil covers, the leather cover.
I'm loving it, man. He loves it all.
The Jane American leather cover is still my favorite cover all time.
So, like, I joke because it's like, it looks old, it feels old. I couldn't get the smell, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Like, it wasn't that like a cool thing? I mean, literally, when you put your hand on it, it's got that. I mean, it's sturdy because it's still on that cardstock, but it feels like those really, really soft covers from the 40s because it's been sitting there degrading forever, and it kind of recreated that. I love it. I love that.
See, I like that idea, Jason, because I thought about doing that in the future. I'm gonna, like, when I'm really known out there, I'm gonna make specialized, like, very limited, very weird, like, covers that, like you say, like a leather bound cover, or maybe a special foil cover, something that can, that. I actually want to create something that the color will actually change depending on what kind of light you use. Like if you use a UV light, you may have like a special glow versus the regular light. So these are things I'm thinking about. Yes, let's swap ideas. I'm telling you, I'm all about creating. And I want to make eventually, like, I want to make one of the world's most expensive comics. I mean, like,
you've got to find printers who have the capabilities of doing that, And
I found these printers that I use. They're called Comic Connections. I'm gonna give you their website, and I'm gonna send it to you. And I gotta be honest, these guys did like an amazing job. I mean, like, it was more or less, we had a miscommunication at first, but what I like about them is the way that they pack their comics and ship everything. Like, I get everything directly from them, and everything's already shipped and packed professionally, back to back, like you're supposed to do. I mean, like, all wrapped in cellophane, perfect. I mean, like, these things come, like, it looks like a freaking not vacuum seal, but close enough to where it's flat and it's nice, and it's just like in packs of 25s. So I use this printer, and I had a local printer when I first did the first one, and I gotta be honest, I mean, this is the first one. He really knocked it out the park. I ain't gonna lie, I do like this. But this guy's just a little better. And like I said, he can't make the foil covers like this one can. So I'm going to redo that one in the foil. But yeah, in the future, I do have plans to do like some weird, crazy, I got to show you this too. So this is a print I have. I made the back of this. Will Torres, right? Check it out.
Nice.
I have Will Torres. Yes. Will Torres is kind of on the payroll. Shout out to you, Will. What's up? So, that's Einstein from this comic right here. So this is him coming out in the story of the book. He's coming out the atomizer, and that's the form that he takes. And Will Torres fell in love with the cover so much. He hit me up one day and he was like, "I have an idea, man. Give me till tomorrow." And he hit me back with that, and I was like, "Get out of here, badass." So I have like, I mean, I know a lot of artists and I know a lot of famous people too, and I don't really like ask them to do work for me, but it's good that they're starting to look at my work and be inspired that they want it. Like, this is not something I asked them to do because I hired him for another cover that he hasn't done yet, which I'm not in a rush to do because my series is gonna be like a 6-part series anyway. So I want all the characters to be done, and then he can look at everything and be like, okay, now I want you to come up with a cover for that because I'm gonna take these 6 books, I'm gonna try to make them into 6 comics. This is part 2, and what I decide to do after that, this is why I'm also asking you for advice, is because I'm gonna take those and I'm gonna combine that and make it into a graphic novel with Will Torres doing the cover to that graphic novel. So when I'm done with the story, I'm gonna switch those all into one book. It'll be 6 parts. It'll have everything that it'll be like an Obulus, but smaller. I thought about writing a book thicker like that at first too, but I decided to do the comics because, like I said, in the future, I just feel like I could just always combine this and just put it right into a graphic novel. And I know a lot of people that do covers. Will Torres is one of them. David Nakayama, shout out to you. Another one. Like, I got people like I can really just go to at any time. Like, look, can you do this for me? And they're like, yeah, sure. And it's good. I'm just, like I said, I know it sounds like I still suck at all this. I still suck at all this marketing and promoting myself. But I guess now what I'm telling you is that's what I'm up to doing, and I feel like my stuff is getting out there. I mean, I did a good interview with David Nakayama, and he really put the comic over. I was really happy. I got the video on that, and I'm going to be seeing him again at Comic-Con. Now, sponsorship, yeah, you're right about that. I could always get into Comic-Con, meaning, like, I know everyone, so it doesn't matter. Put the front gate door to everyone, but it's like, to get into that, you can't even buy at Artist Alley at this time. It's too, even if I wanted to do it last year, no. You have to be still sponsored, even to get an Artist Alley for New York Comic-Con. Other cons, no. New York Comic-Con is a completely different beast. There's so many restrictions on it. But I do have a sponsor. He didn't say officially, but he did tell me he wants to see me at Comic-Con, so I'm going to take that as an unofficial sponsorship. It was this guy that was running the con that I was at last weekend, and I didn't know he was running it. Like, it's founded by a woman, but he's the promoter behind the scenes, so I didn't know that he was promoting it. So he saw me, and he had a table last year at New York Comic Con, and they were sponsoring Will Torres. That's how I met Will Torres a little before that, but I was also going there that day to see Will, and I bought my comic there. So they told me next year, come back. So I'm hoping that these people are just gonna sponsor me. I said, look, just give me a little space. I have my own stuff. I have my own setup, just give me a little tiny space. I just need like a freaking milk crate. I have a table. That's it. That's all I need. I said, you put me over here, I'll be straight. So I was telling him about New York Comic Con last year and how I was gonna we were looking for
the rolling book bag, the other book bag.
Oh man, remember that? Oh my god. I'm sorry to everyone's freaking toes I broke out there that day, but hey, when the train's coming, get out the way. It's New York, baby. It's New York. You got to keep it moving. That's it. And
so, Jason.
So,
go ahead. I just want to ask Jason. After going to as many cons as you've been to promote as many books as you have, do you have like a special milk crate that you bring every single time? Is it?
Dude, I've got a giant Stormtrooper suitcase. That's like my con traveling suitcase.
Nice. Yes, exactly. See,
depending on how big it is, I've got my banner, sling that over the shoulder. I got my backpack with my food in it and stuff like that. And but then like the suitcase is what I pack the books in. And sometimes you need a little bit more, sometimes you need a little bit less, but that's like my traveling suitcase, and it works as a little bit of a conversation piece too, because it looks like a stormtrooper, and people are like, "Oh, yeah." That's my con bag.
Yeah.
I have this big, like, it's a sharper image, the old school real big ones with the handle on it and the big ass wheels, and it's got like 1,000 compartments. But it's real. I mean, you could put so much in there. I had t-shirts for sale in there. I had comics. I had markers. I had everything, like cards. Like it was just like so many compartments. But the thing is humongous. And so I'm walking and I'm like, oh man, this is bad because it's got a little space. It's like I'm chugging a freaking little wagon behind me. And people are just like, boom, 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 boom. I'm trying to keep it as close to me as I can. And Chris is laughing because he's watching all the people that are getting their feet run over. While I'm just casually walking through the place like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm sorry, guys. You're getting too close to me,
And
But yeah, I
you were
love this
doing a
bag.
great
It
job
just makes
trying
its
to
own
avoid
pathway.
people, and they would just walk into
Yeah, you
this
saw
bag
I
like
was-
it. Yeah.
Right. They were just walking into it, so they got run over. And then they look at me. I'm like, yeah, you learned your lesson, right? Like, the bag's not playing. Don't get out of this way.
There was someone in this
So I
big
keep going. It's
cosplay
not first time.
costume, and I kind of did feel bad because I feel like he couldn't even see his own feet. But he's in this big cosplay costume. He's walking around. He kind of like trips on the bag and kind of like looks around like, what did I just trip on? A kid? Or
like he's looking about, we keep moving. I remember that. Like we're literally just like hit and ran this guy, and they don't even know where it came from because his costume helmet was so big he couldn't see out of that thing correctly. Yeah, Comic Con, man, I love
that's
it.
the other thing is like there's no teacher con. There's no like
No.
you've got some events that happen over here. You've got events that happen on this coast, but it's like you have to get invited to those. Somebody has to see your book, and you have to know the right person to get invited to be there. And that's not going to happen when you're just trying to promote a Kickstarter for a book. No. It's not like a Comic-Con where anybody can walk in and just be like, hey, this is me. Like, this is what I'm promoting here. And again, a lot of the time, you don't have the stuff in your hands. Like we were talking about that, Jason, of more pictures and stuff. And I'm like, but I don't want to put fake pictures, like too many fake pictures out there. Because like my cover, I know is not going to look like what's on Kickstarter. That's why I even put that little blurb, like, this is not the final cover. But I want it to look similar to that. Like, that's my end goal of what it most likely will look like.
That's another one of those calculations you got to make ahead of time. So, like, I got lucky this time because the capital was there to produce what I could produce. But that was, like, all out-of-pocket expenses for that first Kickstarter was I paid for that cover art and I paid for those sample pages before we even began. So, like, had that thing fallen on its head, that would have been sunk cost. But it was like that same kind of thing. Like I don't want to put something like on there that I agree with you that might not even be what it is. So I paid for that stuff up front, and it worked out. But like, there's a difference between this online thing and something that I find myself even much more comfortable with, which is having the product in hand and being at the show and dealing with people face to face. As much as social media allows you to reach, a massive audience and across great distances, like the algorithms are against us these days, like viciously against us these days. I was like looking at my Instagram, and there was a time where I had half as many followers and I would get 4 times as many views and likes.
Engagements, that spiked during the pandemic, and it's died for every other platform too, including YouTube. It's the same way.
So it's like as much as it feels old school and slow and very incremental and probably frustrating, I find more value in today. Like today, I told you, like I was at this signing all day long. And the people that I met there and the people who got books in their hands and, hey, if you like this, there's this next thing. It felt more effective than me than any post that I put on Instagram. Do you know what I mean?
And like, that's the biggest thing. Like my wife has started a book talk and a Instagram for like her reading because she loves sharing what she reads. And I mean, she's got a whole library of books on the other side of our basement. But she keeps asking, she's like, how do I grow on Instagram? And I was like, in all honesty, I wouldn't have grown as big as I grew without the Silver Age. I can't remember what it was. It was Silver Age Loop. Whoever ran that just kind of like shared out everyone. And then you would just go through for like 48 hours and just follow every single person that was in the loop, and they would follow you, and you just met new people that way. But that works to get a good following, but it doesn't work to get a good group of people who are consistently interacting.
Right.
So
It's like that. I mean, I don't pretend to understand the algorithm anymore, but it literally it doesn't matter if they're following you or not. Your posts are popping up in 1/50th of the feeds that even follow you.
Yeah.
And unless they're seeking you out, which because it's like a scrolling economy, not a going and finding your thing. It doesn't exactly work. And I mean, I know, like, the cynic in me knows exactly what it is. It's they want you to buy the upgraded version, and then they promise you blah 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 blah. Because it's of course it's about making money, right?
Of course,
there's no altruistic, selfless social media platforms. That is not a thing.
This is not a.
Which then goes down to my wife asking me about, so like, how did these people, like certain people, become famous? And I was like, well, lately it seems like there's 3 people that are becoming famous. The ones who are becoming famous for the stupid stuff they do and the clout and the crazy antics that they do on TikTok or whatever. 2, they've got an OnlyFans link that's connected to it. Or 3, they're paying for promotion. Like, those are the 3 things that it seems like lately, in the past 6 months, has been pumping out consistently. Like, I was on Instagram. I was on Instagram Reels. I think I'm just scrolling through.
I think most of the most famous people that have those social media followings of numbers that are staggering are all before the major algorithm changes of the last few years.
Yep.
Right.
Yes,
like Taylor Swift didn't get her millions of followers in the last 6 months. They came before the crackdown on how following happens and stuff like that. So you're right. Like, the people who it's blowing up right now, it tends to be connected to something else. And I don't know that it even lasts either.
I don't know if it does or not.
A really temporary thing. So what you tell your wife is, like, if you love what you're doing, you do it regardless because it's here and you can't not. But you can't rely on social media the way that I think we were trained to rely on social media in the last decade. I don't think it works exactly that same way anymore.
Well, I will make a vow right now to you guys that I promise that no matter what, I will never do OnlyFans, okay? We're just going to get on with that.
I'm so glad that you got that out tonight because we were all very worried that was the direction.
Yeah, I don't want to put OnlyFans on my links. I'm not doing that, Chris. I don't care how good you make it sound. I'm not doing it.
There was some online betting going on before you got in the room about will he end tonight's show with the announcement about his OnlyFans page. And I'm going to tell you, man, the odds are pretty good in his favor. I didn't bet on it, but I'm glad I didn't now. But, like, I was getting pretty good odds that that's where you were going to go. So thank you for announcing that up.
And that's the thing is, like, there's a couple that my wife and I both follow. Haley and AJ, and you've probably seen them on TikTok or Instagram. They're all over the place.
Yeah,
they do a lot of funny stuff. They talk about Pokemon, and like that was one of the reasons I started following them was they were having conversations about Pokemon, and then they were talking about like he'll walk up to his wife and just share like funny things that a comedian says and get her reaction. And I'm like, this is fun content. I'm listening to a comedian, which is hilarious, and you're seeing other people's reaction, which is always fun to laugh with other people. And then, like, I follow them, and then in the past, like, 6 to 12 months, I started noticing, I was like, there's something going on here that I had no idea about. And then I saw, like, them prepping for one of their streams, and I'm like, this is interesting. I'm like, what? Like, this is how they became famous, or they became famous on TikTok and then started this? Like, what is what? I don't understand it. I'm like, no, this is not okay. Like, you do what you want to do behind closed doors, all of that fun stuff, but I don't know. I don't get that whole idea of like, let me share all of this with the world.
Huh.
I could be also like, yeah, right. I mean, like, but there's also people that want to watch that kind of stuff. I mean, you know,
of course, like, there's always people who want to watch that, but like, I didn't follow this couple because I wanted to watch
Of
them. I
course.
followed it because they're hilarious, and like when they talk about Pokemon, that was fun to watch. Like that was engaging.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I've noticed more as I'm scrolling through Instagram reels. Like because I follow a lot of people who obviously are into comic books. I follow a lot of people who are into like woodworking. Like any niche that I enjoy, I follow just because it's fun. And then as you're scrolling through Instagram reels, you'll find like this random girl who's doing something in that niche
Yes.
and
Right.
doing something provocative. And I'm like, what? That's not what I didn't follow building a birdhouse for you to build a birdhouse with your boobs out. Like that wasn't the reason I followed that wasn't the reason that I followed this thing over here to then get
You're
this.
hitting all the code words and you
Like,
didn't know
what
it.
the hell? I
You're
don't
hitting all
get
the
it.
proper
Like,
code words and didn't know it. You actually looking for a birdhouse.
the algorithm is just so
I know
weird
exactly.
lately.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's people manipulating that. But yes, I get it. Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
it's frustrating. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know that there is one. I feel like almost the backward step is what I'm comfortable with right now. Like the idea of almost like the grassroots campaigning of like reaching out to people almost one by one. As much time and effort as that is taking me, I'm finding it more satisfying than the time poured into posts that I know are just spinning in the ether anyway. Whereas I know that like today at the signing, like the 4 people who once the books that I had were in their hands and I told them about what that connects to, like there were some collectors today. Cause like part of my Kickstarter right now is, you know, because it's so much about the story and because the books are so reasonably priced and don't kind of skew towards that, ooh, here's something that's super, super expensive that I got to have. The comic nerd in me, you know, basically, I don't know if you saw this on the Kickstarter, like I'm giving away the slabbed 9.8 of the foil variant from that first parallel. And that's just like part of it. Like if you back Jane American on the Kickstarter, like I'm giving that away to somebody. And like the 4 people who sat there and like scanned in the QR code at my table today and were like, I want to back you, or I want a shot at winning that. But that just felt more effective.
Yes.
And felt more, honestly, I mean, like this kind of actually, this is a good word for what you were just talking about. It felt more wholesome than whatever we have to do. I mean, nobody wants to see me with my shirt off on my Instagram, and I don't think that's going to help the algorithm at all. But like, no, you know what I mean? It was just like talking to people and saying, hey, here's the thing. If you're interested in it, let's go. And it felt more real. It felt more sincere. It is smaller. It is slower. It is probably grossly inefficient if you're willing to do X, Y, and Z. And yet it's kind of what I'm comfortable with right now.
So what you're saying is we're not going to get a Jane American OnlyFans anytime soon.
You are definitely not. Nobody. There is no market for that.
Do you want this man's grandparents to come back and haunt him, man? You crazy? No way.
No, because I mean, in all honesty, like that is the way that so many people have been doing it lately.
Yeah.
That it's almost like become, hey, you want to make more money? Did you know you could do that? I'm like, but you can't. Like, not everyone can or should do that. Like, if you want to go do it, go right ahead. Nobody is stopping you. I'm not going to stop you. I could care less what you do in your free time. But
there's like, as much as like, look, if I'm being 100% honest with myself, the idea of bigger, more, and better is of course very appealing.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, like a lot of it, especially with Jane, especially with the graphic novel, a lot of that has to do with like, you know, schools, libraries, and just getting people's hands. But I think a lot of people would argue to themselves if you know, more and bigger and better wasn't part of your desire. But like I personally, you're not a public school teacher for 25 years seeking fame and fortune. It's just not part of the deal. So at least part of me is mentally prepared that like if this is the level I'm operating at and I can financially sustain it, then okay. Because I'm still
then this is the lane I'm staying in.
I'm really, really enjoying what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If it was about fame and fortune, like I don't even know what that would be in indie comics, because like we were saying before, like the amount of effort and time that you put into it, the highest ceiling in indies is never going to match the blood, sweat, and tears that we put into it.
Yeah.
And so you're either doing it for the reasons for this and for this and whatever, or you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, even the highest ceiling, like for your David Nakayamas, your J. Scott Campbells, your like even those artists, even some of the best writers like Jeff Johns, even the highest ceiling for them, I still feel is like, yes, you've got the fame, you've got some of the fortune, but comic book writing has never come with fortune.
And like we look at people like that because they are where they're at.
Yeah.
And yet they look at somebody who, published something that was on the New York Times bestselling chart and whatever, and is a household name.
Yep.
And grass, look, I know it's a cliche. Grass is always greener.
Yeah.
Right. So like do the thing that you love.
Yep.
Do it the best that you can. Don't slack on the effort of putting out in the world, but like what it is what it is. Yeah. And if you're looking for some kind of end goal satisfaction, forget creative arts. That's just not the way life works.
Yep. Because
right?
you got
like if you're looking at some end goal piece of satisfaction where everything else is just like, all right, like that. What are we talking about? That is not life.
Yeah.
So like I said, I like what I'm doing right now, and
exactly,
and the effort I'm
putting that's what
into
matters.
It is worth it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just hoping. I'm hoping we hit our stretch goals. I'm hoping we get to this point where as many people as I can get to back it and enjoy it. And my turnaround, I'm really happy because of that financial cushion that I had on the first one. The turnaround for this is going to be even faster. Yep. Like the plan is to have it in people's hands at the end of October, beginning of November, which is even several months shorter than last time. I mean, I don't know how many things you've ever backed on Kickstarter before, but like my favorite thing has always been that thing that I back and then it arrives in the mail 2 years later, and you're like, I don't even remember. I don't even remember backing this. What is this? Kind of thing. Oh, I guess maybe I did. And my turnaround last time wasn't that bad. It was only a few months, and this time it'll probably be closer to 90 days. So I don't know. I appreciate the time. I appreciate talking to you guys tonight. This was fun.
Yeah, of course. It was a pleasure.
This is awesome.
I'm going to go make sure my dog is actually asleep and not sitting there crying and screaming like she just was.
But I got to do the same thing.
Yep. Have a great night, everyone. Good to talk to you guys. We'll talk soon.
Good talking to you, Jason. Good talking to you too, Chris. I'll see you guys later.
Of course.
Peace.
See ya.